I want to say that I brought the wife home Tuesday, and she's doing very good. And I think it won't be long till she'll be able to be back with us again. I'm going to ask you to turn with me tonight into the book of Daniel. We're reading just the first verse out of the 12th chapter of Daniel. There's something other here that has been on my mind for several days now, as I have been privileged to look at some things, watching some news items, talking to some individuals that's not related here, but they're very informative in the things that they do know. And as I read this tonight, I realize from one standpoint in America, we've came through an era of time, the best economical times that America's ever had. But I don't want anybody to think that it's actually been to the betterment of the nation. It's not. And I hope I can say some things tonight to get the young people. Take a good look around you. Don't ignore what the news is saying, because the day could be you might wish you had have listened to it. "500 years before the advent of Christ, Daniel saw this and was told by the angel of the Lord in the 12th verse, I'm in 12th chapter and the first verse. And at that time, now he's speaking of a specific time, not any time. It's not any time down through the ages from Daniel. It's pointing here to the end time. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, which means Israel. I have to say tonight, brothers and sisters, if the religious world knew Michael has done took his position, and his army is already prepared. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. And at that time, thy people, Israel, shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. Now that verse tells us that somewhere here in the ending of time there's going to be a terrible time of trouble. But out of it all, Jewish people are going to benefit by it. We hear much being said in the political realm about Sharon wanting to absolutely bring all the Jews out of the Gaza Strip, plus parts of the West Bank. He's playing politics along with the other politicians of the world. He may be a Jew as far as his race, but he likes a long ways from having the faith of Abraham. I wouldn't even give him credit of having the faith of Abraham. If Abraham was in his place, I don't think we would see going on today what we've seen in the Middle East. But now the time of trouble is what I want us to look at. This time of trouble can be identified in many ways. And it's gradually been going on for the last 60 years. It's come about with such changes and with such slow processes in many ways, people have not realized what is really taking place. But I've heard some things in the last few days, brothers and sisters, makes me sick to think that our own political leaders today are trying to tell the world this is the greatest nation. It once was the greatest nation that existed on this planet. But the nation tonight is dying. And the political leaders of this nation are the very cause of it. Now, the reason I took an endeavor to look at this thing tonight, in the back of my mind, I've got 75 years of watching the changes of things that my own life has seen. I can look back and I can see the things that made America great. America was known for. The people was known by it. The people partook of it, benefited by it. But over the process of times, I see some of these things fading into the background. That which was one time that made America great, it's all gone into the background. And now, brothers and sisters, every kind of a thing is being suggested in the political field. Well, if I was in, I would do this. If I was in, I would do this. And brothers and sisters, they're lying as much as they know how. Now, the reason I bring this out tonight, brothers and sisters, is all because I titled this, and I have a reason for bringing it out like this. Man has outgrown himself. Those who are in position of leadership, they think big government is the thing that we need. It's the thing that's actually killing our leadership. In the last 100 years, man has brought himself to the end of time. And the reason I say that, I want to bring back to you some of the years that made America great. What America was known by. People came here from other countries, traveled across it, and seen its greatness. And yet today, brothers and sisters, some of those things that was known then that made them see America as great, now then they're absolutely being destroyed in the wreckage of decay. America, brothers and sisters, is the newest nation on the face of this earth. After we won our independence, yes, the European nations could look upon us and say we was the wilderness. But because we had men of leadership that had a vision for the people, not for themselves, it did not matter what particular background the people were. It did not matter whether it was from Russia, Germany, Dutch, England, or what. Those people came here to be the beginning of a new nation. In our Southwest, we had many Mexicans settled on this side of the river. And the different races, brothers and sisters, helped to begin to build a nation out of a primitive wilderness background. But because we had a leadership that had a vision to want to lift America up to a position. And all along, brothers and sisters, America had God before them. Our leaders prayed to God. Our leaders trusted God. Our leader, from the Senate to the Congress, all of them, they trusted Him.
Today, brothers and sisters, if you bring it up, they say, oh, you want to bring up that old bigoted religion. I have to say, brothers and sisters, the religious background and the field that America was known by years ago, it was not bigoted. It made America humble. It made America meek. It made America live a moral, spiritual life. Evil people that did not even go to church. Yet when it comes to morals and principles, they had more than the average churchgoer of today has. From the primitive background of America, when America was tilled with the horses, our travel was by the means of the horses and the stagecoach and stuff. In the process of time, yes, the invention of the locomotive out of Europe, it finally crept here. And as America began to grow from coast to coast, across this vast expanse of land, thousands of miles of railroad began to be laying. There was a cry went out. There was not enough of labor force in America to build this monstrosity of network. Out of Ireland, a background of people of poverty, they came and they began to build the railroads. But from the western end, from the Asiatic continent, the Asian, the Orientals, the Chinese mainly, they came here by the hundreds to work to build railroads. And brothers and sisters, within a short span of years, America had a network of railroads that outdid anything that the European nations ever thought of having. And by the time we come to the years of the World War I, our railroad industry has already become a giant. Now, I'm going to be bringing in some things tonight, brothers and sisters, to help show you what has caused America to die. Man has outgrown his bigness. He always wants to be big, but he never realized there's got to be a stopping point. There's nothing wrong in wanting to be big, but if you don't know how to handle that bigness and manage it, that's going to destroy you. It's going to kill you. Many a man has went out and absolutely, he could not get big enough by having this and this and this. He wanted more. So he goes in debt and he gets more and more. Yes, as he accumulates all this material things around him, it makes him look big to others. But after a while, brothers and sisters, that thing destroys him. It sends him into, we will say, a mental depression. He goes out and kills himself. That's why I've titled this tonight, Man Has Outgrown Himself. He don't know where to stop in anything. And especially when he has turned God aside, that he's no longer got God to put a warning out, then God just lets him go. And no wonder we've got thousands. I heard the news here about 3 weeks ago. In America alone, the teenage suicide is climbing at an all-time rate. Now, somebody tell me why. I have to say, not all of them teenagers are hungry. Not all of them teenagers haven't been denied of going to movies, seeing TVs. I have to say, somewhere something destroyed their future. As a human being, they cannot see a future for themselves. They see something that's so big out there, brothers and sisters, they can realize it's only a few out there that gets to absolutely work within the realm of that. Everybody else is a puppet. Let me use this railroad business. It was one of the first systems that helped to begin to make America great. While we still farming by horses and traveling by horses and mules. Across this vast land, our commerce, our freight was being moved by long trains, locomotives. At the same time, we built a network of passenger trains. Back in World War II, setting in the depot in Chicago, on a troop train, getting ready to pull out, heading west. I looked lined up There was passenger trains, the Silver Streak, the Flying Arrow. They were famous passenger trains of the 30s and 40s. And if you wanted to travel fast, you get on one of them, and they would take you there. And brothers and sisters, all through them years, from one end of America to the other, passenger trains. You could get on a train in Chicago, and you could be in Florida in a matter of a few hours. I remember years ago, the Pennsylvania had a passenger train that left Chicago to Jacksonville, Florida. It's called the South Wind. It only stopped at certain periodical points. But between these points, the tracks they had then was up in A1 condition. They had maintenance on them all the time. And many a time a train would go through Henryville, 60 miles an hour, and when she got in open country, she's 80 miles an hour. Today, brothers and sisters, it's a shame. Our railroads have become obsolete. Ties are rotting, the rails are loose, and the trains come down the crack a weeb and like that there. 35, 40 miles an hour is about as fast as they want to run them. Because we're all the time hearing a train's been derailed. I bring these things in tonight, brothers and sisters. As America began to become great in the beginning of the industrial era, that did lead us to World War II. We have come along, we've built the automobile. I can remember the time when I read the statistics of the American automobile. We had 75% of all the cars there is in the world. We manufactured most of them. Therefore, brothers and sisters, my point is tonight, America was looked upon by other nations and envied because they seen America as something great. All right. Along comes the unions. In the coal mines of Virginia, plumb into Ohio, all through that regions. Some of these men was working in these way underground miles and miles of coal mines. The unions was a beginning of helping make the working conditions of the laboring man in the mines better, because his life there was dangerous. But as I tell these things, brothers and sisters, I have kept up with the history of these things. By the time we come to World War II, the union in the coal mines was constantly calling strike, 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 strike for more money, more money. That at the same time, brothers and sisters, was causing effect on the railroads, because our railroads, brothers and sisters, had to run on coal and steam. All through that era of time, the unions played their part. It made wages better for the working man. But don't forget, I said the title of my message, man has outgrown himself. Now I'm going to ask you to look back through the years. When we was great and we had the potential of being able to hold ourselves with anybody, then all of a sudden, we want more money. So we strike from the automobile industry to the coal mines, to the railroads, and here we go. Well, it's not wrong, brothers and sisters, to want a better wage. But when you reach a point, brothers and sisters, you destroy the very thing that your lifeline has been built around, then you're getting ready to hang yourself. And now I have to say tonight, now where's the unions at? Look what they've done. I remember the last coal mine strike in the mountains. They thought they had the railroads. What did the railroads do? Said, we put up this was long enough. They decided, brothers and sisters, they would absolutely park the old steam locomotive and go for diesel electric. Well, one by one they did. But notice what happened. Once they began to change and go to diesel electric, it was not long, through a process of years, the railroads have lost their trade. Because here comes the American trucking industry. I can remember, brothers and sisters, when the little old Silver Fleet or the Huber truck lines used to operate out of here. And maybe the trailers would be about 25 feet long. Now then, brothers and sisters, they're 51 and 53 feet long. And you go west, they'll even pull two of them. So as one system gets big, after a while, something comes along, brothers and sisters, and it's seen that that thing has gotten too big. Something takes its place. Something moves in. And it isn't long. The former thing begins to die. And I have to say tonight, brothers and sisters, you no longer have the fast passenger trains, the Flying Arrow, the Silver Streak, the South Wind, the night train to Memphis, the Wabash Cannonball. That was a real passenger train that went south. And my brothers and sisters, America has become a nation of people that seems as though bigness, they couldn't get big enough. And as this system and this period began to creep in, after World War II, then, brothers and sisters, is when this stinking United Nations thing started. Nothing was said back in the beginning, brothers and sisters, that any one nation was going to have to give up any of its freedom. It started out at first that it was going to be a means for us all of functioning and working together and trying to lay aside all the bitterness of the things that causes war. I'll never forget that October 1945, the war was over. The boys were starting to come home. A second lieutenant on this October morning blew the whistle. We assembled down in a grassy knoll, and he sat down. He had these sheets of paper. And he said, I have this information here from the State Department. He says, the world has now formed a body of nations called the United Nations. They have tried to form it after the pattern of the United States. And he made a bold statement then. He says, the main objective and purpose of it is that we believe that we can function and work together as nations like the United States has worked together, then that this war was the war to end all wars. Well, brothers and sisters, not being a Christian then, yet having gone to church, knowing a few things that the Bible said, I said to myself, that waits to be seen. And you know, brothers and sisters, in just a few years we was in Korea. Look what it cost us in thousands of lives. In a few more years we was in Vietnam. Look what that cost us in thousands of lives. And ever since then, brothers and sisters, for some reason or other, we go from one era of political leadership in America down the line. It seems as though it's always fell upon America. If somewhere there's a need to be changed or something to be corrected, America, you do this. And I have to say tonight, it is a shame that America was the very absolutely old hen that laid the egg that has stopped this stinking United Nations. Now, I said the old hen that laid the egg. She was. Because tell me why that United Nations building's up here in New York City. Whose idea was that? It's because we were the mother hen that laid the thing. But since then, brothers and sisters, new generations of politicians gets in it. New ideas feeds in. Begins to change this and change this. And now, brothers and sisters, that whole body of the United Nations is just waiting for the day for America to give up more of their freedom and submit it over to them and become more submissive to the United Nations than we are an independent free nation ourselves. They want to be able to come in here, brothers and sisters, and try every crook in America under their own tribunal. I have to say, they ought to shoot every last one of them. May I say this tonight? When any group of politicians get to the idea that he or they are going to absolutely lay the groundwork of a nation's, of a body of politicians, that we're going to change the world, you are nothing but a bunch of devils dreaming with wild dreams, because you've denied your God and he won't let you do it. You have overlooked what the Bible says. And that's why I have to say tonight, man has outgrown himself. He's made himself so big. He's spending money by the millions. But at the same time he does it, there's thousands of people suffering the consequence of it. What do I hear? I think it was on Tuesday night as I watched the news. Right now that we've been almost going on 2 years in war in Vietnam, a war that they thought was this going to be a knockout. Now then, the families of these soldiers that went there and gave their lives, many of these families, brothers and sisters, have had to live now on military pay, and now they're fallen in dire need. It showed that in different cities where these families are at, organizations have come to the rescue. They're taking up donations and offerings, helping them to assist them to pay for. And I have to say, any time a soldier's wife and children has to go to a food handout for aid there, when we live in a country of rich politicians that have promised to give away everything else to everybody else in this stinking world, I have to say, somebody is a devil. My Bible tells me charity belongs at home first. Then if you got anything to give it away then. But there's hundreds and thousands of people tonight in America. They're living far below the poverty line. And it's not because they won't work. It's because they've been cut out completely out of the process of everything. The other day when I went through this new store down here, I thought to myself, looking in that big monster of a thing, yes, the day will come. If time was to last, Serial Book will just about close its doors, because Walmart is building these supercenters all over the world. And because that, brothers and sisters, they can import the different products of things that they need to sell, and Walmart has become a system. They'll work any kind of an immigrant in here, legal or illegal. And I have to say, brothers and sisters, I'm not against going to Walmart, because I do my grocery trading at Walmart. But I've got sense enough to know also that in this modern hour of time we live in, bigness is just before the end of it all. Big government, big industry, big this, big that. When we was a nation, we produced all the cars we needed. When we was a nation, we had International Harvester, Case, John Deere, Alice Chalmer, Macy Harris, Ford. But after the World War II, when the economic picture in all of these areas began to close in, it wasn't long, brothers and sisters. Alice Chalmers sold out to partly Deutsch of Germany. Macy Harris sold out to Ferguson. And on, brothers and sisters. Our major industries has sold out to other foreign industries. Look what our auto industry has become. There is no such thing as an original American-made car anymore. You know it. Why? All because, brothers and sisters, when this thing called free trade came in, it began to bring death to the commercial, the industrial side of America. Why do I say that? I was talking to a man that knew pretty much what he was talking about. Looking at America from the agricultural standpoint, the state of Washington in the fall of the year used to be where our great apple crop came from. All of those vast orchards out there was planted by the original landowners of those areas, maintained, groomed by the generations that came along. It was America's fruit line. Free trade, what did it do? Now China ships her apples here at a cheap cost. So cheap, brothers and sisters, that the original landowners of those very orchards could no longer maintain them and keep them for what they was able to get out of their crop. They take chainsaws and cut the trees down. What does that tell me? It tells me something in America that one time made it great is dying. As I say these things tonight, brothers and sisters, it don't make me feel good to be able to look at a country. From the political leadership, yes, they like to try to tell, oh, it's a democracy. We are fast losing our old democracy that we used to have. Because everything is becoming so legalized and legalistic. The real life out of our freedom that we used to have is being choked away. Now then, brothers and sisters, we've opened our borders. Immigrants from Mexico, South America, from all over the world are coming to America, coming by the hundreds. If somebody wants to marry a girl down here and come the way this young brother did, it costs him a fortune to get here. But you want to come across the border by conniving and doing everything. Now then, our society is crawling with these illegal immigrants. And in places they're demonstrating, rising up against the authorities. And now the officials, brothers and sisters, in those places are looking at one another. What are we going to do with this? America, you're dying. You got too big for yourself. And I'll have to say tonight, brothers and sisters, the day is coming when a Muslim can come here easier than some of the old bloodline that helped make America. Who was the people, brothers and sisters, that helped make America 150, 200 years ago? It wasn't the Muslims. Here they came from Russia. Here they came from Germany. Here they came from France and Italy, England, Ireland. But when they came here, in their hearts they agreed, this is our new home. We're going to help to make a new home for ourselves. And none of them ever left. They raised their families. They learned to speak English. And I can remember, brothers and sisters, you could go into 2nd Street in Louisville. You could go into a department store that might be a German. But they would speak enough in English that you could make out what was talking about. Nobody ever made fun of the broken English that they spoke it in. My point is tonight, now they've got it, brothers and sisters. You don't have to learn to speak English. Come. And I don't like to say these things tonight, brothers and sisters. But when you see the Mexicans by the hundreds riding bicycles, walking the streets, going into the stores, and you hear they're living in our low-income housing projects that was made for low-income senior citizen people 40 years ago. What do you think all of this is eventually leading to? It's leading, brothers and sisters, to the death of a nation. Where's our industry in the railroad business? It's gone. Where did the coal industry go to? You see how it went into the background. I hear now and then that the coal mines begin to strike up again. But what helped bring that to an end? If the unions would only realize bigness, there can be a time to stop it. I had an uncle to tell me. He worked for the Continental Cannon Company. He says the United States don't know it. But right at the time them coal mines were striking and causing the railroads to suffer the consequences of not having enough of coal, which caused the railroads then to go to diesel electric. Said if they'd only known, already the New York Central had come out with an engine that was very economical on coal, and they had developed a turbine steam engine. Told how powerful this steam locomotive was. But because the railroads then began to go to diesel electric, the Continental Cannon Company then turned right around and buy this turbine steam engine to run their cannon companies with. I have to say, brothers and sisters, being big is wonderful, but there comes a time, it's a time to stop. But the sad part of it, most people don't know when the time to stop. And I'm saying these things tonight. We're standing at the threshold of the end. We truly are. Because our nation has forgot its morals. Our nation has forgot its principles. Our nation now wants to take every kind of an immigrant from this world, and they bring the Muslims in here by the hundreds and the thousands. Oh, they're a peaceful people. And I have to say to these politicians who talk like that, you're the craziest, ignorant bunch of people there ever was. You don't realize how that Muslim religion has progressed through 1,000 years of its existence. No, it was not the peaceable ones that declared war. It's that terrorist element. And that terrorist element has fought and done their way to bring an end to every society where Christianity has ever lived. That's why they spread all across North Africa. That's why they come up through, brothers and sisters, through Syria, right into the Bosnia and into those places where Christianity at one time flourished. Muslimism took over. And then Catholicism and Muslimism has lived at each other's throat for hundreds of years. I have to say tonight, brothers and sisters, as America is trying to be the leader of this new world order, they're trying to tell you, brothers and sisters, we're still a democracy. We are not a democracy. We are fast selling out everything that our democracy was known by 60 years ago. When I hear the news the other night that so many hundreds of thousands of dollars has been given to Mexico to help them in their health care business. Since when is it our responsibility to give another nation medical aid to help them in their health care business? When we've got thousands of people right here in America, they don't even have no health care of any kind. They've been left out on the end of a limb. It's only a small majority of Americans that really have any kind of health benefits. Now let's watch that. Back in the 30s, President Roosevelt, he was the one that said that in the future, in case of any kind of a depression, that if every taxpayer was to pay a certain percentage of his income into such and such a fund called Social Security, that when he would get of a certain age, he would not have to worry. He would be able to draw a Social Security check, sort of like a pension. Look what our political leadership has done with that. Then when they come along, brothers and sisters, and did put in what they call Medicare and Medicaid, I have to say this, brothers and sisters, I realize this, I'm a long ways from knowing everything. But you can see more from on the outside looking back at it than you are on the inside looking at it. Every time, brothers and sisters, each year that they increase your Medicare allowance, I notice this, the medical profession ups the price. The hospital ups the price. Well, where's this thing going to stop at? How can we reach that other element of people down the line? I have to say, brothers and sisters, if something don't happen and wake up some people, brothers and sisters, with a true vision of how to do something, America is dying. Look at our insurance institutions, brothers and sisters. I can see small business now having to have furnished health care for their employees. But then these insurance companies turn right around, brothers and sisters. And each year they want to up this, then they want to up this. And then watch the insurance companies. It isn't long. They're taking big, large sums of this money and they're putting it in great big skyscraper buildings and real estate and property. Then when the time comes, brothers and sisters, that they're to sell out and really do their part, they don't want to change the reading of what they're supposed to do. Now then, I have to say, you could have 100,000 insurance companies as long as they all want to live and do that way. You're never going to have a decent health care system with a dime, because every year it raises. Then every year it raises, watch the doctors, it raises. Then the hospital, it raises. So here we go, up the ladder. Now we've got the thing so high, brothers and sisters, somewhere something's going to fall. And the reason I'm bringing these things out tonight, brothers and sisters, I've observed these things through these years and months. And when you sit back and hear of what's going on in this nation, I have to say, God have mercy. It ain't right. And then when they showed the other night, aid being taken up, having to help these families that are now living on military pay, having to pay house payment or rent, keeping their utilities and everything else, and they have not the money to buy food and stuff, I have to say. God have mercy on these leaders that want to raise their senator wages so many more thousands of dollars every year. And they got their own health care insurance. They can go to the naval hospital anytime they want to. While down the line in America, there's that element of thousands of people living on minimum wage, this and that. Can't hardly see their way through anything. And when I look at it all, brother and sister, I have to say, bigness is bringing death, and they don't even realize it. And I have to say, it's a shame. There is no remedy for it, as long as they want to think it and dream it like this. So my point is tonight, brothers and sisters, in America, economically, socially, it's creating a very disturbing time of trouble. And the politicians are actually making their bid for that under element down there. And they'll say, oh, if I was in there, we would have this kind of health care. They've been preaching that for the last 50 years, brothers and sisters. And they've not been able to change it yet. They get one little thing put in, brothers and sisters, but if you notice down the line somewhere, something else comes along and eats and gnaws that away. And I'd have to say, if they wanted to do for America what was right, then close the borders. Stop all of these free gifts wanting to come in here for a free handout. And then, brothers and sisters, if we have to go to war, let's go to war to win it. It's a shame and it's a sin to go to war to get rid of terrorism, and you wind up, well, you can't bomb this and you can't bomb that because that's sacred. They don't look on you as something other for sacred. They didn't care how many innocent people they killed when they hit them two towers, did they? 3,000 people went up in smoke, died a terrible death, all because that bunch of rascals cared less about us. They wanted to create a fear, and make us tremble. Well, then I have to say, If you want to get rid of terrorism, then you do something to scare the liver out of them. Take some of our bombs over there and bomb half of Baghdad off of the map. Let them people stand in the street screaming, "Oh, help us! Save us!" And when you find out there's a bunch of them terrorists in a building somewhere, blow the thing off of the map. Don't send our men in there to die and in a terrible death when they don't know whether they can come out of it alive or not. Maybe what I'm saying tonight don't mean a dime's worth of anything to you. But I've seen America, brothers and sisters, come from the frontier days. But I can look back now and I can see a lot of those famous, wonderful eras of time. They're dying. We've got criminals, crooks, gangsters. Where's it than John Dillinger ever thought of being? I want to say this about this poor Martha Stewart. Maybe she did do something other wrong. Well, they made a spectacle out of her. But I read about this Bill Clinton when he was in Arkansas, some of the rotten deals he did down there. And look at that guy walking around up there, brothers and sisters, like a king. That's America for you today. If you know how to, brother and sister, use it, you can get by. But if you don't, then you're on your way down. And so as I say tonight, the last 60 years has but got out of the life of America. And now, brothers and sisters, the whole world is fulfilling the scripture that Jesus said in St. John's Gospel. In that day when the Son of Man cometh, will he find faith on the earth? No. Because the educated man has taken it out of society. And I hear these politicians say, "I'm for better education." Oh, you are. You miserable pup. That's all I've heard for the past 60 years since World War II, better education. You've got better buildings. You spent more money in the last 60 years. I'm not against a decent education. But for the sake of Almighty God, why do we have to bankrupt a society to teach a young generation how to live like the devil and think like the devil? Go to school looking worse than savages in Africa with their hair standing on end, tattoos on the shoulder. It's a disgrace to a nation that one time was known the world over that we had the best educative system there was on the face of the earth. I can remember when the educated teacher in Indiana had the record. They could get a job teaching school anywhere in the United States they wanted to, because they had the highest ratings of qualified teachers. Where did all of this background go to? What happened to it? Don't tell me, brothers and sisters, that we need a better education. We need a better bunch of politicians and a bunch of better educators with a better brain on their heads. But they haven't. They've sold out to the devil, and the devil's got them by the neck, and he's taken America for a last trip with the hangman's noose. I don't care, brothers and sisters, if you built skilled buildings big enough that you had golden stepping stones, you had bathrooms, brothers and sisters, with silver and all kind of ornamented fixtures. If you're not going to teach that young student something, a principle, tell me tonight, why is it that young students, not all, but there's teenagers, don't tell me they come from poor families. They don't. They come from well-to-do families. But they're looking to the future. They don't even see a future because the future for them looks dismal. It's hopeless. And I have to say, so they take a gun and blow their brains out. I never heard of that when I went to a one-room schoolhouse. I never heard of that when I went to a four-room schoolhouse at Borden. Because we was taught different. Our textbooks had better stories in them than they've got now. We don't want God in the schools. I heard a young fellow this morning smarting off. He thought people that were religious was bigoted. Well, I'd like to look him right in the face. You are the most ignorant, stupidest thing I ever heard and walking in shoe leather. You're the kind that's sending this nation to the dogs and to hell, and thousands are going to follow you. You don't want a God that can speak to you in the night. You don't want a God that you can get on your knees. You think that humiliates your pride. Well, I'm thankful tonight, brothers and sisters. God touched my heart years ago. And I have to say, He's let me see a few things as I grew through life. And that's why I can look back and I can see what America was. It was great. But now its freedom's been taken away from it. Little by little. And if time was to last another 25 years, at the pace it's going, brothers and sisters, mark my word, the day will come when a lot of people will commit suicide. Because the whole future to them is hopeless. It's helpless. And young people, never let me hear you say that I'm against a good, decent education. But a lot of this junk that they want to cram down your throat, to me, brothers and sisters, I think is as worthless as trying to make the Ohio River run uphill backwards. Because you are a human being. And when we have to sell our souls out to a certain elite type of educators and politicians who want to control us and manipulate us and arrange our thinking as for the future, then I have to say, every newborn human being is losing his individuality. You've been born to be a part of a process. You know, brothers and sisters, I'm not against hospitals. I'm thankful to God that we have them. I'm thankful for the doctors that we have today. But I can see something, brothers and sisters. The old medical doctor of years gone by that used to sit down and say, "How do you feel?" Brothers and sisters, he's fast disappeared off our horizons. Now everything is just like a great big piece of machinery. When my little wife was taken over to the Jewish hospital, when you see all of these people going, nurses, try to understand what I'm talking about. The individual is just another nut and bolt on the assembly line of the profession. And when it's done, I'll say this, if you didn't have the money, you wouldn't get there. But if you're old enough to have Medicare or Medicaid, they'll take you, and they'll take you for everything that the government will pay. And what was the price this year, it will raise for the next year. And I have to say, when is all of this going to stop? Is there not an end? Big government, big industry, big this, big that. That's what we want. But where's the little fella? Where's he going to fit in? How many understand what I'm talking about? Where's the little fellow? I have to say, when God put you here, brothers and sisters, don't tell me He put you here to be a little part of a process. I believe that God wills for certain people to be able to have financial means, because most of the time they are somewhere beneficial to somebody else's livelihood. But when you show me a man, he's a billionaire, I have to say, brothers and sisters, he needs more brains than he needs money. Because what's all them billions going to do him any good when the day comes his heart stops beating? And I want to say this tonight, and I ask God help me to say it in the right way. We have got a category of big stuff in America today. And yet they look down upon the little fellow as he has nothing. The individual farmer that used to be an important person, his means of agriculture has just all been taken away from him. That's why I said the other night, if time was to last another 50 to 75 years, agriculture in America will become an operation run by companies. How many knows what I mean? You may live on the land, but you just live in a house. But your ability to farm it for a livelihood, it's out. Because bigness has swallowed up the individual man's ability to be independent and be himself. And I say all of this, brothers and sisters, to show you, when you destroy the individual's ability to project himself into this, that he can feel he's done something for himself, you have destroyed the very thing that God put in him in the first place. God never created us human beings to be a part of a process. And you just coast along. You go along and you work along. But you reach a place in life, you have no choice. You can't say, I'll do this today, I'll do that tomorrow. When a time comes that the devil has made this thing so miserably big, brothers and sisters, I have to say, thank God one day Jesus Christ is going to strike this earth with a stroke of wrath, and he's going to come with a spiritual element of immortal people, and he's going to set up a government here. And I want to say this. It's not going to be dog eat dog and hog eat hog. It's going to be done in righteousness. And brothers and sisters, and anybody that lives in that hour, he's going to be an individual that'll be able to go out here and on this earth. And the Bible says, and they will plant vineyards and eat the fruit thereof. They will build houses and inhabit them. The others shall not. Because God made you and me, brothers and sisters, to be an individual that somewhere on this planet, you would be able to invest your time, your labor, your purposes in raising a family. If you're a farmer, then you will do your part. You do it, and you feel proud. But when I was told by that brother the other day, the state of Washington, where America used to have the most beautifulest apple fruit, for years and years it was shipped east. And he's in the trucking line. And all of a sudden this miserable free trade stuff opened up. We bring these apples in here from China, brothers and sisters, and flood our markets. Now then, those poor people out there, brothers and sisters, that have produced the beautiful fruit that America ate and enjoyed, those poor people can't compete with this giveaway stuff. So they take chainsaws and cut their orchards down. And I have to say tonight, bigness has its limitations. Bigness brings a lot of death and suffering and heartache to a lot of people. So brothers and sisters, I'm going to close tonight by saying this. Just because I said Walmart will swallow Sears and Roebuck up, give it 50 years, and you won't have Sears. I can remember when Sears and Montgomery Ward was like Walmart is today. How many understand what I'm talking about? They was mainly a mail order place. But I can say this, brothers and sisters. After World War II, then Sears and Roebuck, they began to establish a few stores. They established a big one here in Louisville. But now then, little by little, you can see Sears is cutting back. And I'll have to say, all of this other stuff is moving in. Another 50 years, you're not going to see the same as you've seen it today, because this whole nation is heading for a climax. And I have to say, if something don't wake America up, the hour is coming. A lot of people are going to commit suicide. I seen tonight in the news, a terrible typhoon has hit Japan, the worst since they've had in '88. The news showed tonight 20,000 homes have been destroyed. 55 people have been known to be killed, many injured, and many missing. As I seen that and seen that in the footnotes, I thought to myself, we're living in the last days, a time of trouble. Oh, to the politician, to the rich man, he don't see it. But oh, let's come down the ladder. Let's come down here to the little man. Let's come down where the mass of people live. I have to say, there's a lot of trouble, heartache, because there's no future. And that's why I have to say, some teenagers, they see no future for themselves. So God help us in this hour. Father, I pray tonight that what I've said, Lord, is not unwise statements. I've said it, Lord, out of honestness, because I look back through life, I see what I've been privileged to see and learn. And I'm thankful to you for your grace and mercy, for the gift of life through Jesus Christ that you made available for me. And Lord, thank you that you allowed me to see this before all of this other stuff began to creep in, to choke out the other things that has seemed to take over the human mind. Lord, bless my brothers and sisters. Help us all in the days to come now. And Lord, help us to be ready for your coming. I pray now, Lord, in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.